Today we're going to be learning about complex numbers. These are also known as imaginary numbers, and they are found in section 5.4 of your Algebra 2 book. A complex number or an imaginary number is a number that contains the element I. I stands for the square root of a negative, and when you have the square root of a negative, that number does not exist unless you are dealing with imaginary or complex numbers. Like, for example, the square root of negative 25. Up until today, I've been teaching you that that is not possible and we would write no solution. However, today we're going to learn about imaginary mode, and we're going to learn that you can do the square root of 25, which is 5, and put an I, or an imaginary number, with your answer. So the square root of negative 25 would be like 5i if it were imaginary. Now, I want you to go to your calculator and switch it to imaginary mode. Push the button that says mode, down towards the bottom. You'll see where it says real. Take it off of real and put it on A plus BI, also known as imaginary mode. And when that's highlighted, hit clear so you can get back to a blank screen. Okay, here's our first example. Square root of negative 25. Like I said, we're going to break this up into a negative and to the square root of 25. So the square root of the negative is I, the square root of 25 is 5, so our answer would be 5i. Now notice that this is an imaginary number because it has the element I with your answer. Okay, breaking down the square root of negative 18. You're going to break down 18 just like normal, and remember to put an I with your answer because it was the square root of a negative. So 18 broken down in a factor tree, you have a group of 3's that come out, 2 stays in. When you write your answer, make sure you put the I out with the 3 for the square root of the negative. So 3i square root 2 is our final answer. This is an imaginary number. On example 3, we want to FOIL. Now you can FOIL by hand, which I'm going to go through with you how to do that, and you can also type this in your calculator, and your calculator will FOIL it automatically for you. To type this in our calculator, we do parentheses 2 plus 3i, which I is found at second decimal point, close parentheses, times parentheses 5 minus 4i, and again I is found at second decimal point, close parentheses. Okay, now you're going to get your answer automatically. Let me talk you through the steps of FOILing. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times negative 4i would be negative 8i. 3i times 5 is 15i. 3i times negative 4i is negative 12i squared. Now I squared by definition is negative 1. So we replace the I squared on the end with negative 1, and we would have negative 12 times negative 1, which is positive 12. You can combine your like terms in the middle to make 7i. You can combine your first and your last term to make 22. So 22 plus 7i is our final answer. This should have been what you got on your calculator if you had done this work in there. On example 4, we are going to subtract, which means we're combining like terms. We have 3 minus 7i, and then distribute the subtraction sign so it becomes minus 8 and minus 5i. Your like terms are the negative 7i and negative 5i. They'll make negative 12i. 3 minus 8 is also like terms. They make negative 5. So negative 5 minus 12i is our final answer. On example 5, we try to solve an equation. When we start solving for x on example 5, we're going to start by subtracting 108 to the right. Then we next divide by 3 to get negative 36. When you square root a negative 36, you're going to put a plus or minus sign in front of the square root. Anytime you go from squaring x to a regular x, you put a plus or minus sign. The square root of negative 36 is 6i, so plus and minus 6i is our final answer. Okay, you try practice with each one of these and pause the video until you're ready to go over them. On number 1, the square root of negative 49 would be 7i. 2 divided into 6 for my exponent is 3, so x to the third. 7i x to the third. On number 2, the square root of the negative is going to be an I. 54 square rooted is a decimal, so we're going to break this down into factor tree. When you break down 54 in a factor tree, you have a group of 3's that come out and a 3 and a 2 that stay in. When you break down your x's, you have one group of x's that come out and one x that stays in. So all total outside, you have a 3, an x, and an I for your imaginary element, and then left inside, 3 times 2 is 6, and also an x left over. Number 3 is foiling. You can foil by hand or you can foil in your calculator, or it'll do it for you if you want to type it in. To foil by hand, 3 times 5 is 15. Outside gives you plus 18i, inside gives you minus 10i, and last gives you negative 12i squared, which would turn to positive 12. So 15 and 12 is 27. And then your like terms in the middle became 8i. That was from the 18i minus 10i. You get 8i from your middle terms. So 27 plus 8i. Number 4, we're going to add and subtract like terms together. Let's start with the negative 6 plus 3, which is negative 3, minus negative 2 is negative 1. And then 5i plus negative I is 4i, minus 8i is negative 4i. So negative 1 minus 4i is the final answer. Number 5, we're going to subtract 48 to the right. We're going to divide by 3. We're going to take the square root of negative 16, which is plus and minus 4i. Square root of 16 is 4. Square root of a negative is I. Put a plus or minus sign with your answer. Simplifying fractions. My suggestion would be to do the fractions in your calculator. Make sure you put parentheses on the top of your fraction and on the bottom of your fraction. Your calculator will do all the work for you. However, I'm going to show you how to do it by hand as well. If you're typing the first example in your calculator, you're going to put parentheses 3 plus 5i, close parentheses, divided by, and then put a new set of parentheses around the 4i. And you're going to get some decimals, which if you hit math fraction enter, it'll change those back to fractions and give you your answer. Now let me show you how this is done by hand. We're going to multiply top and bottom by I. You can't have an I in the bottom of the fraction because it's a square root, and that's why we're having to simplify this. When you distribute the I to the top, we get 3i plus 5i squared. Distribute the I to the bottom, you get 4i squared. Remember, I squared is negative 1, so this becomes 3i minus 5 on top over negative 4 on bottom. You can divide 3 by negative 4 and negative 5 divided by negative 4, so our final answer would be negative 3/4 I plus 5/4. On the second example, we have to multiply top and bottom by, again, what's called the conjugate of the bottom. It's the opposite of the bottom. Here that would be 1 plus 3i, and that's going to require some foiling on the bottom. On the top, 2i times 1 is 2i, plus 2i times 3i is 6i squared. On the bottom, when we foil, 1 times 1 is 1, and then outside we get plus 3i. Inside we get negative 3i, and then last we get negative 9i squared, which is going to become positive 9 on the bottom. And 1 plus 9 would be 10, and your middle terms are going to cancel out on the bottom. So on the top we have 2i minus 6 over 10 on the bottom. 2 divided by 10 is 1/5. 6 divided by 10 is 3/5. So 1/5 I minus 3/5 would be our final answer. Again, you can do this work in your calculator. Just make sure that you put parentheses on the top of your fraction, parentheses on the bottom. And then when you get your decimals, hit math fraction enter. You should get the same answer that I did working it out by hand. Try these and pause the video till you're ready to go over them. Number 1, we're going to multiply top and bottom by 1 minus 2i. It's the conjugate of the bottom. 4 times 1 is 4, minus 2i. 4 times 2i is negative 8i. So on the top, 4 minus 8i. On the bottom, we FOIL. It's 1, and then outside gives you minus 2i. Inside gives you positive 2i, and last gives you negative 4i squared. Your middle terms on the bottom cancel. 1 plus 4 would be 5. So when we divide 4 by 5, we get 4/5. Minus 8 divided by 5 is 8/5. And then I. 4/5 minus 8/5 I. Number 2, we're going to multiply top and bottom by I. That's 3i minus I squared on the top over 5i squared on the bottom. Remember, I squared is negative 1. So we have 3i plus 1 on the top over negative 5 on bottom. You can separate these fractions into negative 3/5 I minus 1/5. On number 3, we're going to multiply top and bottom by 4 plus 5i. That's the conjugate of the bottom. FOIL on the top and bottom. Combine like terms. We have negative 22 plus 34i on the top over 41 on bottom, and then separate your fractions. So negative 22 over 41 plus 34 over 41i. Again, you can do these in your calculator. I would suggest you doing that just because they're kind of complicated. Just make sure you put parentheses on the top and parentheses on the bottom of your original problem. Okay, last slide is about the powers of I. The powers of I follow the pattern I, negative 1, negative I, and positive 1. Every power of 1 will fit into that pattern, and they repeat after every 4 terms. So I to the 22nd, we want to count to where we are in the pattern when we get to the 22nd term. The 22nd term of the pattern will be the same place that the second term of the pattern would be. So negative 1 is our answer to this one. I to the 43rd. You have to count through the pattern until you get to the 43rd term. The 43rd term would be at the same place that the third term of the pattern is. The third term in the pattern is negative I. So negative I is our answer to this one. I to the 17th. Count to the 17th term of the pattern. That would be at the same place the first term of the pattern is. So the first term is an I, and that would be our final answer. I to the power of 80 would be at the same place that the last term of the pattern would be. The last term in the pattern is positive 1. I to the 71st. Count to the 71st term of the pattern would be at the same place of our third term of the pattern, which is negative I. And then 143 would again be at the third term of the pattern, so negative I is the third term, and that would be our final answer. If you divide your power by 4, a remainder of 1/4 or 0.25 means you're at the first term of the pattern. A remainder of 0.5 or 2/4 means you're halfway through the pattern at negative 1. A remainder of 0.75 or 3/4 means you're 3/4 of the way through the pattern, and a remainder of nothing means that you are all the way through the pattern and you are sitting on the last term, positive 1. So take your power and divide it by 4 and see where are you in the pattern to know what your answer is.